Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're completely rethinking how you view your morning cup. Seriously, whether you're a diehard espresso fanatic or you're out there whisking matcha every single day, we are stripping away all that lifestyle branding. We're looking strictly at the mechanics, what these drinks are literally doing to your body, your brain, and your output. So let's just dive right into it. If you've ever stood in a cafe debating what to order, you've probably asked yourself, which one gives more energy? It's kind of the classic question, right? You look at the menu, you do the quick caffeine math in your head, and you try to maximize your jolt. But I'll let you in on a little secret. That is completely the wrong question. Honestly, treating matcha and coffee like they're just two slightly different flavors of the exact same energy-boosting liquid, it's a huge mistake. It totally ignores the actual biology at play. Your nervous system is incredibly complex, and hyperfixating on just total energy completely misses how the caffeine is delivered, the chemical environment it comes with, and how your brain actually processes that hit. So Section 1, comparing stimulation systems. We're shifting the paradigm here. We aren't just comparing two drinks anymore. We're comparing entirely different control systems for your brain and body. Think about it as a whole stimulation system. This is the complete package of how a drink delivers stimulation, the compounds that tag along with it, and how your specific, unique body responds to that delivery. Now, sure, both drinks have caffeine, and caffeine works by blocking adenosine, that chemical that builds up in your brain and makes you feel sleepy. But caffeine, it's just the engine. It absolutely does not dictate the ride. The real effect comes from the whole package, the environment it brings with it, and exactly how your nervous system reacts to that specific formula. Just look at the contrast in the ride. Coffee gives you this fast, sharp signal. It's like jumping on a fast, bumpy tram. It gets you moving incredibly quickly, rattling you into high gear. But man, you feel every single jolt along the way. You really feel that acceleration. Matcha, though, is a distributed signal. It's a slower rise with a much smoother contour, kind of like a steady, uninterrupted walk. You end up at the exact same destination, alertness, but the shape of the journey is entirely different. One literally jolts you awake, while the other just smoothly elevates your state. Moving right along to Section 2, the engine and the shape. Let's look at how this ties into focus, because the speed and the delivery completely change the actual type of focus you get when you sit down to work. A great way to think about it is this. Focus is like camera control. We throw the word focus around like it's just one single state of mind, but it's really not. You can increase the brightness, you can sharpen the image, or you can stabilize the frame. Coffee acts like cranking up the brightness. It just kicks your system into high gear, flooding the sensor, sharpening everything for immediate action. Matcha, on the other hand, acts like stabilization. It smooths out that nervous system wobble, giving you this calm, steady frame for sustained, long-term concentration. So why do they act so differently? Well, it all comes down to the chemistry. Coffee is direct. It hits your system fast, with practically zero buffering. Matcha, however, brings some extra compounds to the party. Most importantly, an amino acid called L-theanine. This actively buffers the caffeine. Going back to our car analogy for a second, both of these drinks have massive, powerful engines, but matcha just has a way better suspension system. That L-theanine acts like shock absorbers, literally soaking up the aggressive bumps and spikes your nervous system would normally take from raw caffeine. When we map out these trade-offs, you can really see the difference. Coffee is faster, it's sharper. That makes it your absolute go-to for a decisive push. But you are accepting a much higher risk of jitters, anxiety, and that dreaded afternoon crash. Why? Because it triggers a sudden adrenaline dump. Matcha is slower, smoother. It's perfect for stable attention, but yeah, it can feel a little underwhelming if you're looking for an aggressive kick to the system. The big takeaway here? One isn't universally better than the other. You just have to see them as distinctly different tools designed for completely different jobs. Which brings us right into Section 3, when each drink wins. It's time we finally drop the whole I'm a coffee person or I'm a matcha person identity thing. It's all about matching the right tool to the task in front of you. Okay, so here's when coffee absolutely wins. You need momentum. You need to flip the switch from sleepy to alert right this second. Or maybe you're staring down a task with massive activation energy. You know, that dreaded Monday morning inbox zero push where you just have to break your own inertia. Coffee is like a firm tap on the shoulder saying, hey, wake up, we're moving right now. If the work requires aggressive drive and urgency, and your system can actually handle a sharp spike, coffee is definitely your winner. But here is when matcha takes the crown. You want alertness, sure, but you really don't want to feel all revved up and wired. Maybe you have a long, sustained block of deep work, reading, complex problem solving, where anxiety would completely ruin your flow. Or maybe you're just sensitive to caffeine's harsh edges today, or you're already carrying some internal tension. If coffee is a shove, matcha is like a steady, supportive hand on your back. It guides you into productivity without wrecking your composure or jacking up your heart rate. But you have to be careful because every tool has a failure mode. That brings us to section 4, how both drinks mislead. Because let's face it, a tool can feel great in the moment, but quietly set you up for a much worse outcome just a couple of hours later. Both of these drinks set some pretty clever psychological traps. Coffee's trap is borrowed energy, and it is incredibly seductive because it gives you this highly convincing illusion of function. That sharp adrenaline spike totally masks your deep exhaustion, letting you push and push until you inevitably smash right into a wall. Matcha's trap, on the flip side, is false adequacy. It can feel so pleasant, so smooth, that you actually mistake that gentle comfort for being truly dialed in. You might sit there thinking you're doing deep work, when really you're just drifting, doing shallow tasks and underperforming without even realizing it. Think of it as a spectrum of error. On one extreme, coffee ramps up your risk of overshooting. You land in this jagged, anxious, heart-racing zone where you're honestly too stimulated to focus on anything. On the other extreme, matcha increases your risk of undershooting. You might feel a bit soft, underactivated, and just a little too slow to handle urgent demands. So the real expert move here is to stop and ask yourself, which mistake is going to be way more costly for me today? Because context changes absolutely everything. If your baseline anxiety is high today, coffee is just going to amplify that agitation. In that case, matcha is the obvious choice to preserve your sanity. But what if you desperately need momentum? Coffee has a massive advantage there, while matcha might leave you dragging your feet. Imagine mapping this to your actual workday. You might use coffee to blast through sleep inertia for a high-stakes 9 a.m. meeting, but then switch to matcha to power through a long afternoon of focused work without triggering a 5 p.m. crash. Let's wrap things up with Section 5, Choosing Like an Expert. This is where we pull it all together so you can start making these choices based on your actual physiology, not just blind habit. Because there are hidden variables you have to consider before you ever take that first sip. We're talking about your current sleep debt, your baseline anxiety, whether you're drinking it on an empty stomach, and crucially, your personal dose sensitivity. Stimulation is exactly like pouring water into a glass. If your glass is mostly empty, that pour of coffee feels incredibly refreshing. But if your glass is already brimming with stress, cortisol, and a huge sleep debt, that exact same pour is going to cause a massive, messy overflow. And your personal sensitivity dictates the size of your glass. Some of us can handle a giant pitcher, while others are working with a tiny shot glass. So we really need to stop asking which drink is better. The only question that actually matters is better for what outcome, in what body, and under what conditions. Armed with this framework, the power is completely back in your hands. No more guessing. You can literally match the shape of your energy to the exact shape of your day. But it does leave you with a much harder question for tomorrow morning. Are you reaching for that cup because it's exactly the tool you need? Or just because it's a habit you can't break? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Definitely something to chew on or sip on next time you order.